Are you ready to create your extraordinary life? As a passionate and driven, energetic coach, armed with my 60 years of wisdom, life, business experience, and knowledge, I guide and help others uncover what keeps them stuck by helping them create a new mindset, leading to their becoming the person they only dreamed about. I'm Terry Yoffe and have 8 decades of living on this planet. And the one thing that I've learned is that you start to create change by changing yourself. Every podcast episode will inspire you to confront your limiting beliefs, take bold steps, and create the extraordinary life you deserve.
Literally experienced a military coup in Latin America, a civil war in Africa, in the fall of the Soviet Union by the time I was 21 years old.
Christian Ray Flores is a multi-facetted professional who has lived in many places around the world. He talks to us about his unique background as an immigrant, born in Russia, lived in Chile and Mozambique, then came to the United States at age 35, which taught him values and beliefs and what America means to him. His life experiences and travels inspired him to help others create the changes they are looking for through personal development, business, and creativity. Welcome. Today we have a man of many talents. That's all I can say. Christian Ray Flores. To me, he's a Renaissance man. He has done so much, and I'm actually going to let him tell you about it. But because of his travels, because of his background, he has used all of that to help create change for others. And I loved his quote that I'm going to start with: capture everyday magic. So, Christian, welcome, and talk to us about capture everyday magic, because to me, you're so magical that it's incredible.
You're very kind, Terry. I appreciate it. Yeah, as you said, a bit eclectic. So there's a few things that I do. Right now, I'm focusing on, I do business coaching for people who want to not compromise creative freedom and expression for safety. I think many professionals out there, extraordinarily talented, they sometimes have this sort of mistaken impression that in order for them to be safe, secure, maybe financially secure, they have to compromise some of the creativity, some of the things that they want to do. And I feel like you can have both. And that's sort of the focal point of my coaching. I do high performance coaching, personal brand development. So that's sort of my main thing. I have also a couple other endeavors that I have is we have a Third Drive Media is basically a marketing company for startups. And we have founded a after-school academy in Mozambique in Africa, helping kids get out of poverty. This is in Maputo, Mozambique. So those are sort of the main focus points that I have. But I think what you're referring to is I have this sort of very eclectic background. So I'm not sure how much of it or how little you want me to share.
What I love to do is pull back the curtain, as I say, and talk to us about your background, your challenges, how you grew up, where you grew up, how you went from a refugee to a pop star to an entrepreneur to a philanthropist and to a coach. Because I don't know that many people. I mean, I've reinvented myself many times, but you're the leader. So talk to us about your background, because I think so many people would be interested in all of that to, again, what drove you to what you're doing today.
Yeah, the backstory, it is sort of strange and fascinating all at the same time and confusing. But basically, in broad strokes, I was born into sort of instability right away because my mom is Russian, my dad's Chilean, very strange combination. I was born in Moscow, and then we moved to Chile when I was a baby. And then all of that instability started when I was about 5 years old. They had a military coup down there. My dad was in a concentration camp. We were refugees. We basically had to be in a United Nations facility for a while before we left for Germany, then Russia, then Africa. My dad got a job there. Then my parents got divorced. I was a teenager and I was sort of thrust back into instability after the first sort of wave of instability. And we went back to the Soviet Union. This was in the worst times of the Soviet Union. So I was raised by a single mom after I was 14 years old. So we experienced a lot of instability, poverty as well. And, it's a very strange life where before you were 21, you literally experience a military coup in Latin America, a civil war in Africa, and the fall of the Soviet Union by the time I was 21 years old. But that's just what happened to me. And I think to your point of reinvention, some might look at this in my tales of turmoils and stuff like that and danger as really more stories of disadvantage. I would say there was a lot of disadvantage, but there's a lot of advantage in disadvantage. And that's precisely why I think I had the creativity, the boldness perhaps, or the strangeness to start a music career when all of my peers, after getting a degree in economics, would go into banking or trade to go the musical career, which the chances of success are very low. And I was just very successful, very lucky as well. But I became one of the top pop artists in all of that territory of 15 different countries of the post-Soviet space.
Well, you don't look like that, and we'll get to your book a little bit further. This is a young man, long hair, gorgeous looking, being up on stages. After your pop career, where did you transition into?
I started doing ministry and philanthropy first. I became spiritual. I grew up atheist my whole life and then became a Christian when I was 26. And I felt sort of this pull of spirituality, of ministry and philanthropy. I grew up in very poor countries, right? So those were my first transitional sort of things. And the thing is, it's not like you switch things. You sort of add layers or depth to what you do, I think. And eventually, when we moved stateside, I married an American. She's from Wisconsin. She actually moved to Russia to be with me, and we lived in both Moscow and Russia and Ukraine and Kiev. So I have children born in Moscow and Ukraine. You consider that with the context of the current war, right? And we moved to the States. I did ministry. I did philanthropy full time. I served as a Latin America VP for Latin America for this big charity. And we also started a couple of companies, actually 3 total, 2 nonprofits in the last 20 years in the United States. And all of these things are actually wonderful expressions of our freedom to choose, a freedom to reinvent ourselves, which I know you've done several times as well. It's one of the things that really drives me to do coaching is I work with people that are extraordinarily gifted, but then they're in between seasons. And in between seasons is always this confusing stage where you don't exactly know how the future is going to map out. And you might need some guidance, some community around you to get you to that place.
Given your background, and one of the things, and we're going to get into your book, because I would love to talk about that and kind of deep dive into that, if that's okay with you. Little book of big reasons to love America, a love letter from an immigrant, which obviously talks about your story from your days in Moscow and Chile and Mozambique into where you are today. And talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to write the book.
I was a fan of America way, way before we ever moved here. And I would say a fan of the spirit of the culture, the entrepreneurship, the boldness, the sort of the pursuit of happiness, the freedom of it all. I was a great admirer of that because I grew up in places that were very restrictive, right? There was no freedom of entrepreneurship, freedom of speech. There was a lot of oppression. And I saw from afar this just incredible country and culture, more importantly. So eventually when we moved to stateside, I would comment on things that were not obvious to Americans. I would comment to my wife, obviously, and I would say, look at this. This is really remarkable. Look at that. I mean, it could be a cultural thing, an economic thing, a social thing. And she would say, you know what, you have really good insights. You should someday publish something around this. And I sort of kept moving, obviously this is not urgent. So the urgent always displaces the important. And partially because of time, partially it was because I knew that the minute I start talking about something like this, it would be construed as almost like a political thing, and it wasn't. It's actually really more of a cultural commentary. And eventually, I did decide to write it when I felt that there was this big, almost surge of self-loathing in the country, and it was like the cultural conversation. And I thought, how odd is that? For me, I know it's odd for any immigrant who came here and feels like this is an incredible country, obviously far from perfect, but just incredible nonetheless, and an incredible land of opportunity. And we're grateful to be here. And I just find that many Americans, because you don't have that perspective, could use a little bit of some optimism, right? So I have 10 chapters, 10 reasons to love America, and with some really colorful, let's say, both visual illustrations and story illustrations in each chapter.
I know that one of the important areas for you is family and connection.
Yeah.
I think you talked about that in the book. And I'm going to take a guess that because you didn't have that stability as a young person growing up, living in many different places, the divorce and the uncertainty, that as your life progressed, it became a value for you, an important value.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It became a huge priority for me.
So this country was based on immigrants, right?
Yes. Yes.
Totally based on immigrants like yourself, like hundreds of thousands of other people that, you know, had unrest in their countries, and they came here to find the streets paved with gold, so to speak, or created their own road of paved gold. What were your first impressions? I mean, you did say, but came here. What was the first thing you and your family did? You settled in the Southwest.
We actually traveled around quite a bit. We first moved to right outside of Philadelphia because I was working with an organization based out of there. And so we traveled quite a bit with that because I was managing a big project, like a $2.5 million project for inner city kids, right? Which is really a fascinating introduction to America because I was not just sort of in places that are of privilege. I was in places of darkness and struggle as well. And we moved around. We were in South Florida for a while, then Los Angeles, California, and then Austin, Texas. So I did get a really broad education, both geographically and societally, right away. And that did not diminish my optimism, actually, I must say, because there's really poverty to be found anywhere, and crime and darkness and all of those things. But I think America, more than most countries that I know, is a place that lifts all boats. And sort of the infrastructure, the access to opportunities is unparalleled. I really do think so. Now, I think obviously the will to seek that opportunity is very different in every person, in every family, in every subculture as well.
Christian has more to share, but first, a short word from Try Coaching. Do you ever think about becoming extraordinary rather than ordinary in life? The truth is you can. As a matter of fact, everyone can. How, you might ask? By putting in the hard work day after day and doing whatever it takes. Most people want to become seen and heard, making an impact and difference. However, they often take the easy way out. Unfortunately, life and the world doesn't work that way. If you are longing to have an extraordinary life and don't know where to start, reach out and let's start a conversation. I know what it's like to go from ordinary to extraordinary. Now, back to the podcast. I think there are, and I'm not getting political, obviously, but I think there might be a lot of people that don't feel there's opportunity everywhere. Mm-hmm. It is a land of opportunity. Since you've been here, what changes have you seen? How you've been here, how long?
21 years. So quite a while, actually. Yeah.
Okay. In the 21 years,
yeah,
have you seen a lot of changes, better, worse, even keeled?
I would say, I've seen it. That's sort of the beauty of America, right? There's checks and balances, there's ebbs and flows. No one has a monopoly in the direction of the country. It's not a dictatorship. It just isn't. And there's messiness that is sort of inherent to a democracy. We discuss the dirty laundry very publicly. We disagree very strongly, and there's always several camps and sub-camps and tribes within tribes that fight and disagree and rage. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because I find it to be all wonderful, actually, and I've seen improvements. I'm now a citizen, have been a citizen. I've voted, I think, for 1, 2, 3, 4, is it 3 presidents? I think 3 presidents at the very least, and of maybe 4. And I've taken one stance, maybe changed my mind a little bit. I was hopeful with one candidate and disappointed, just like everybody else. I find that to be all actually fantastic. And even if there's a sort of a dip in the wisdom in which things are going, there's a correction as well. I find that to be completely acceptable and part of the deal, right? It's so much better than being part of a place that offers a lot of quote unquote safety and security. I'm now sort of misquoting a little bit Franklin, right? Who said, if anybody who exchanges freedom for safety is not worthy of either freedom or safety. And I think in dictatorships, that's what happens, right? People who support dictators, they're exchanging freedom for safety. In America, we don't do that, which basically means we're a little bit less safe, but also a little bit more free. And that's okay.
If you were speaking to people that lived here, right, that weren't immigrants that lived here, or obviously came from immigrants many, many years ago,
right?
What would they say about what you just talked about? Would they agree with you? Would they see another side of this? I'm just trying to get a perspective from somebody that's been here and an immigrant who's come here.
Well, I think so. I mean, part of the reason why I wrote the book is to give people just one insight, one subjective opinion from the standpoint of an immigrant. Because if you're local, you just don't have that perspective. You might have it intellectually even, right? Because you're an educated person, but you don't have it experientially. And I think it's really healthy to hear a different perspective. And to the point of what you're making, I love being an immigrant who learns from the locals who are third generation locals, right? Like really, really local. I live in Austin, Texas, and I have several friends who I've nurtured a relationship with who are Texans in the 3-4 generations back. And I find that fascinating. I want to learn from them. I want to not only be respectful, but actually learn and behave as a guest, really understanding the traditions, the benefits of being deeply rooted. To the point of conversation, I think I heard somebody, I think maybe Schwarzenegger was on I think The View recently, and I actually did appreciate his perspective, although it was controversial. It wasn't welcomed by the ladies of The View. And he said, look, I'm an immigrant. America gave me everything. And if you're an immigrant, you should behave respectfully to the local culture. You should assimilate. You should bring your own culture, your own view, but you should also be very curious about the local culture and about the country that has welcomed you. And I totally 100% agree with that. And I'm very grateful to be here. And I try to learn from the people that I'm with. I invest in friendships with people who are not immigrants, actually, because I want to learn.
I love this conversation. Another perspective, right? On somebody that came here from the worst possible situations and knows what it's like.
Yeah.
In a Russia or a Chile when uprisings and cultures change, and maybe Mozambique. I think in your book you talked about we become the stories we tell ourselves. That really kind of popped out at me because I'm also a coach. I'm a podcaster. I speak. And my story was, obviously, I'm not an immigrant. My great-grandparents or my grandparents were. And I could have had this woe is me, boo-hoo-hoo story that I could have carried around with me. Instead, I took my story and I created my journey and how my journey from where I was and what I did to become who I am today, which nobody would ever bet on me being a podcaster.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah.
So your story. Let's hear how you have revamped your story, and you have. And what can you tell people that become the stories they tell themselves, which doesn't usually allow them to grow and transform and change?
That's a good point. And I would say this, there's a difference between a victim story and a victor story, right? The victim story is, look, all these things that are outside of my control happen to me. And I will keep telling that story as an explanation of my sort of lack of progress in life. The victor story is, look at all of the things that enriched my life, and I can infuse those things. They gave me wisdom, they gave me courage, they gave me all kinds of insights into life. I can infuse those things, the story, into my expertise. And that is an actual personal brand. And I think it's the best time on the history of the planet to actually really lean into a personal brand. And the idea is that your expertise, is extraordinary and good as it is, you're a professional of some sort, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're a professor, you're a writer, you're a manager, it doesn't matter, right? You're a musician or an author. But if the stories that shaped you who you are, it's what makes your expertise shine. And it makes it unique. And that's a personal brand. And I think people underestimate just how powerful that can be. So they basically try to fit in, and they try to be a generality rather than a specificity, right? They're statistic. Well, I need to fit into this sort of almost like broad story of what it means to be this kind of person in the marketplace. And I say, forget that. Infuse your story, your actual story, all of the things that make you distinct into your expertise, and you will stand out in service to others, and you will be unstoppable. I think that's what people look for. People want authenticity. They want your actual wisdom, not just generic advice.
Well said. I'm in your corner with that. And I'm 82, 60 years of working and creating what I wanted to for my vision brings wisdom like you, what you went through. And here you are, successful, doing everything you want to do and creating change by working with people in helping them. But I'm going to guess that part of that is going back and using your own past as a way of talking to people and helping people become who they are.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's essentially the job. The job is, I'm not adding expertise. You already have the expertise if you work with me, right? What I'm helping you see is the value of your own story. How to recognize the value, first of all. Then how to weave into that value and your passion, your specific goals, and into your expertise, and then how to present it to the world. That's basically personal branding. And I think it's a wonderful exercise for anyone to do regardless, because we are the worst judges of our own personal value. By far, people underestimate what they're capable of, not overestimate what they're capable of. So I have the joyous opportunity to help people see how much more they are than what they think they are. And then they are just surprised. And we say, okay, here's how do you incorporate that into what you do already, and you're really good at it. That makes you distinct. That makes you more valuable. You can build a business. You can be an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur within an existing company, or you can be a socialpreneur, right? In a nonprofit or church. But all of that is about creating something, not being sort of a generality, but being a specific, not being a statistic. And once we see that, it's impossible to not see it anymore, right? Now you believe, now you're excited to create something that is extraordinarily valuable for people around you.
As the victim, everything happens to you. This happened to me. I think as the victor could be, everything happened for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a reason. And as I look back on my life and what I had to go through, and who wants the pain? Who wants to open that uninvited guest door to someone where there's pain and discomfort? Everyone wants it easy. However, if you don't meet that head on and deal with it, then you don't ever get to growth, change, transformation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see that personally for me, for you. So I know you've given us so much. Perhaps you can offer one or two tidbits for our audience as a takeaway, an insight, something that might have them stop and say, oh, okay, before we wrap up.
I would say just take a step back and just consider for a moment that what you do, your expertise, can be more valuable, help more people, and bring more impact and income. And yes, there are things that you should learn to do that. You could do it as an entrepreneur, start your own thing, maybe a side gig of some sort. An entrepreneur, a new offering within a company that you work with, an institution, or a socialpreneur within a nonprofit even. It doesn't have to be directly monetized. But if you just learn how rich your life is and how it can infuse your expertise with life and uniqueness and value, you might be blown away, and it can change the future for you. It can open incredible opportunities for you. And actually, I have a free thing that helps you sort of even get acquainted with how ready you are to do that. It's an assessment called the Exponential Scorecard. And if you go to exponential.life, this is a website, and you spell it without the E. So exponential with an X, exponentiallife.life. There's an assessment there. It takes about 5-6 minutes maybe to fill in, depending on how quickly you do. It's like 30 questions. You get a really great view of how ready you are to start something like that, and how to create and understand how valuable your personal expertise is infused with your story.
And I'm also going to, again, mention the name of your book, because I think it's so worthwhile reading, which is Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America, a Love Letter from an Immigrant by Christian Ray Flores. Christian, this has been eye-opening, inspiring, and I have enjoyed every moment. I know how busy you are, and I really want to thank you so much for coming on and being part of my podcast world.
Oh, the pleasure is absolutely mine, Terry. You've been wonderful to speak to. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. I hope that Christian's compelling and extraordinary conversation about what it's like being an immigrant and living in this country has given you some thoughts for yourself. And as for him, no matter how imperfect this country is, there is no better place to live. Really good food for thought. If you loved what you heard, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star rating and review. Also, please visit my website, trycoaching.com. If you are or know a Gen Xer, my next episode with Paul Stressner will share thoughts about the Gen X generation who are now in midlife, going through transitions and trying to figure out next steps. Please don't miss this episode as Paul opens up about his own life's journeys and being a Gen Xer.